everybody, and welcome to the Total Soccer Show. My name is Taylor Rockwell. It's Tuesday, which means it's MLS Weekly, and I'm rushing through the introduction because I want to talk about James Rodriguez. I'm very excited, even if, by all accounts, maybe I shouldn't be. We'll find out. Here with me to talk about that and many more things are the man, the myth, the legend himself, back from Coachella. He looks very hippie-ish now. The whole vibe has changed. It's Ty Joe. Joe Lowry. Hello, Joe.
Hey, as long as I look hippie-ish and not pink from sunburn, that's a win. As I put on my Patreon video, that was my primary goal. I was only out there on Saturday, but I was out there all day on Saturday, and it's toasty, right? I mean, an early February day in Indio, California is fairly warm, but I escaped. I escaped the sunburn. I had a great time. It's good to be back.
At the risk of going into weather chat right away, Joe references it being toasty where he was. There is still ice on the ground here in Richmond, Virginia. Jeff Reuter, in Minnesota in February, what is toasty? Like 35 degrees?
We're going to hit 40 this week.
Ooh.
Congrats, man.
And people are genuinely just like, I guess it's very
flip-flops.
unusual. Yeah, we're already just like shorts, flip-flops, grill in the front yard, that sort of thing. It's all happening out here right now.
My fault. This is my fault. I did the weather thing first. I thought sunburn would not be weather adjacent. It was too close. That's on me. Instead, I will say thank you to all of the TSS folks who literally stopped me at the Coachella Valley Invitational. It was like a good handful of people, maybe 5 or so people who like recognized me and were shouting at me in like a good way, and we had like good conversations. It was a ton of fun. So thank you for listening to the show. I'm guessing you're listening right now. It was sweet. I had a great time. I hope you did too. It was a really, really fun day. And just a reminder that people actually listen when we're talking to each other in this void. It was really sweet.
So, like, actors will get their famous roles or characters or lines yelled at them. Joe, did you get
they just shout, "Hey, nerd!"
Forever?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The same page.
Oh, you preempted the nerd joke with
my
a nerd
fault.
joke. Outstanding work. I am glad it's gotten a little bit warmer in Minnesota. I think James Rodriguez will be pretty pleased about that as well. Jeff, when last we discussed this, it was a possible move, a likely move, but now it is a move that is happening. What's the vibe? How are we feeling?
I think generally people are really excited around here. The fans that I've spoken with are feeling like it's a bit of fortune to have a name with such prominence actually fall into Minnesota. Like, if you keep in mind the historical precedent for Minnesota United, I would say their most notable players globally before James Rodriguez were probably either Teemu Pukki or Darwin Quintero and that's much more regionalized to the Americas at that point. It's a move without any sort of parallel in the club's history. And so I think that there's excitement around that. And I think that there's also a lot of excitement when you hear about all of the concerns about where he's at in this stage of his career and how bought in will he be following a World Cup. The framework of the contract is something that people in MLS circles that I've spoken with are very impressed by, because frankly they're terms that are so team friendly that usually you don't think you would offer that to a player of his stature. But World Cups are funny things, and we've seen Gareth Bale make similar trade-offs in the past. Julio Cesar, goalkeeper for Toronto in 2014, also Brazil. I think just generally it's been a difficult offseason and an offseason with a lot of change for Minnesota United, but I think that finishing it by adding James Rodriguez, even for half a season, I think has just been a nice little dessert course for a lot of the fan base.
The answer to this question can be I don't know or nobody knows, but to my understanding, it's the short-term contract to basically get to the World Cup break, so he's got kind of fitness and maybe familiarity to then go off to the World Cup with Colombia. What do you think is the likelihood that he returns to Minnesota after the World Cup?
I would imagine, I get the sense that the option will more likely than not be picked up. The option is a safeguard for both parties. So if James doesn't have the physicality to play at an MLS level, there are obviously understandable questions about that. Even after he did play fairly well, it should be said, in Liga MX for Club Leon. Granted, Club Leon, I think, with the nature of Liga MX, could build a better squad around him to hide some of those deficiencies than MLS teams usually can. So I don't think we're quite in an Andrea Pirlo, New York City realm, but the fact that I even have to say that kind of implies what the concerns are. But for James, obviously, there will also be questions about the fit and in terms of playing in Minnesota. He said he wants somewhere that's kind of quiet and remote, and he has indeed, like when you look at post-Everton, played at some clubs that would qualify as, the less glamorous markets of their leagues, like Vallecano. But, I don't know if there's a guarantee that this is the spot for him. So, for him to keep his options open as well, where if he does want to go back to Colombia, if he does want to go to one of the major clubs in Brazil or Argentina or anywhere else, that door could be open to him this summer rather than the winter. But it begs a lot of comparisons of this being kind of a partnership of convenience and a marriage of like single purpose with the World Cup. But his first love's Colombia, so if you're gonna marry the guy, you better make sure he still has, that phone wire open. I don't know. I lost the metaphor
troubling
somewhere.
analogy. Yeah. I think I'm right there with you. I mean, this move is fascinating, and I really truly don't know if James Rodriguez is going to be playing for Minnesota United on August 1st. Like, I genuinely have no idea. I would lean more towards probably not, but it's complete conjecture, right? That's just the reality. This move is so interesting. I think it is, after I've been thinking about it more over the weekend, the most surprising move of the MLS offseason, in a move where Timo Werner went to the San Jose Earthquakes, right? So there's a good few of those, but this is the one. And it's not just because it's James Rodriguez coming to an MLS team. It's not just that it's James Rodriguez coming to an MLS team that he might not have known exactly how to point to Minnesota on the map, which is a real thing for some of these people coming to MLS, right? It's not just that. It's that he's coming to a team that played the soccer that Minnesota United played last year, And Minnesota has already talked about publicly this idea of evolving a little bit and keeping some of their principles the same, but also transitioning their style of play. And Cam Knowles, new coach from Minnesota United, he was going to transition this team at least a little bit. And how much, we don't know, really. And we still don't really know. But now, what does that transition look like? And is it more than they planned? I would have to imagine it is. I mean, I think you can evolve quite a bit if you're Minnesota United from where you were last year, playing sort of anti-soccer and set pieces and all these things. And you can do all those things, and there's a lot of ground between you and the next most normal MLS team in the rankings, right? And now, with James, how much of what you plan to do, even with the planned evolution, can you actually do? And are you going to be better off for that, or is it going to somehow not make you into more than the sum of your parts? I am fairly high on what James can do in MLS. I mean, he had 12 goals in 2,200 minutes for Lyon in the calendar year of 2025. 12 non-penalty goal contributions. My mistake. But he was impactful in basically 2,000 minutes, a full season's worth of minutes for Lyon. I don't know what his motivation is going to be. I don't know exactly how he fits in this team or where he's going to play or how much he's going to play or if he's going to play. But it sort of feels to me like if Minnesota United's locker room can withstand the culture shift, and this is a very not Minnesota move from all the things that they preached in terms of the buy-in and the collective, and we're going to be gritty and ugly, and we're going to lean into the fact, apologies for the weather chat, that it kind of sucks to be outside sometimes in our state, and fans are showing up and they're gritting it out, and we're going to grit it out too on the field. You can't really make that same argument to your players or to your fans when you have James Rodriguez. But I do think Minnesota needed a little bit more in the final third. They probably still need one more attacking piece to really compete with the big dogs in MLS this year. But I think this team's going to be pretty good. And I think there's at least a world, probably a few of them, where James is a really useful piece of this team.
How likely of a world is that to be for us, Joe, do you think? Because I think this is a great move. I really like James, and I think he's a player that even if he's walking is still going to be able to move the ball so well and find space and find options and pick out plays, and especially if he is motivated ahead of the World Cup and hopefully motivated thereafter. That's more of a question mark. But with everything you've said, I think a lot of the focus has been that I've seen on, this is a move that was destined for Miami or New York or LA, and yet he's in Minnesota. So curious. And Minnesota are an established club with a pretty established record of making the postseason. It does still seem like a team that basically wouldn't be able to get a player of his caliber were it not the situation it is. And so they are making it happen, but also making it happen at a club who had, Joe, to your point, 39% average possession, the lowest in the league last season, defended very deep. So the question is, how quickly can you transition under Cam Knowles? How quickly can you maybe adjust to incorporate him? Not that you have to do that, because he is on the short-term loan deal or short-term deal, and maybe in the end of it you think, it doesn't really suit us. But it feels like a player that you have to find a way to get into at least some starting 11s fairly quickly.
I would assume so. I genuinely have no idea how this all goes down. I mean, you don't bring in James Rodriguez if you're not going to play him, right? I mean, I think it's probably telling that Minnesota signed him and not one of those other clubs that you mentioned, I would imagine if you're James' representation, you're probably not starting with Minnesota on your list of, well, I got to get this guy playing before the World Cup. Where should we begin?
For a person who publicly said he hates the cold, yeah, I don't know if that's where they
There
started.
you go. So, I mean, I would assume that Minnesota said, oh, wow, we think we can use this guy in a way that maybe some other teams didn't think so. What that role looks like, Jeff, I mean, do you have any more insight into that? I think there's a world, like I said, in which this all goes great, but there's other worlds where this looks different.
Yeah. I spoke with Colette Elamad, CSO from Minnesota, for a piece that'll come out in The Guardian sometime this week. And one thing that they had talked about was that it was important for him to find a good physio department. Well, Minnesota United won Medical Staff of the Year in 2025. And I know that we don't pay attention to those pageants necessarily, like the off-field awards or the kind of like support staff awards, but these are the sorts of things that will make it easier to sell a player, right? Like I remember speaking with the head physio of LAFC right after Gareth Bale had signed, and they had talked about like the moment of his recruitment that was really important wasn't like John Thorrington picking up the phone and calling his agent, or is Bale interested in living in Los Angeles, California, United States of America. It wasn't any of that. It was when he saw the training ground and saw where he would actually be doing his World Cup preparations and looked and said, world class. I think that I could work with that group. So I think that these things do have an outsized import for a player who is so motivated by national team duty, like Bale was with Wales, like James is with Colombia, right? Where you are truly looking at, this is my gym for the next 4 months, pretty much. I think that also when you look at, when you read that piece that will, again, be up sometime this week on The Guardian, might be today, might be by the time you're listening to this. Who knows, listener? You tell me. Don't tell me. That'll be a really annoying comment thread. But,
tell him. Just tell him.
Just
He
tell
wants
me.
to know. Tell him.
The main thing is that nobody, according to El Ahmad in this interview, has promised a minute. From Michael Boxall, the captain of the club, to James Rodriguez, to Tomas Shankalai, who just signed, to provide some actual width. The idea is that pretty much he wasn't promised minutes or starts within this, and that the club is already framing this as he is a month behind, even if he has been doing individual training since he left Club Lyon, which he says he has been since January 3rd. He's not going to just walk in and immediately Joaquin Pereira is on the bench or taken off of corner kicks or whatever the case may be. So easy to say that sort of thing if you're the CSO, a little harder to do if you're a head coach. But, those roles are differentiated for a reason, and the tone can be very different coming from Cam Knowles, who, like you've alluded to, Joe, like they have a guiding philosophy of how they want to do this, but a lot of the sort of murder ball that they were doing last year, a lot of that was they cited like the mix of injuries in the Copa America in the summer of 2024, where they had 13 players who were gone, as sort of the origin of why they decided to lean so little into playing soccer and so much into playing anti-soccer. And once they had success with that, it was really hard to fall off of that. And then in 2025, they didn't get the players they needed in time to evolve it. I think they might now, with more so to do with Nectarios Triantis than James Rodriguez in that conversation. I think actually having that base of midfield could do like Jeppe Tverskov level good for them. He's a little more proactive at getting into the final third. So keep an eye on him. I think that he's going to be a crucial player, and he just blew me away in that series against Seattle. Like watching him against Roldan and Vargas in particular just kind of showed how difficult he is between his physicality and his techniques. So, that's the midfielder that I think that I'm looking at as the make or break piece with Minnesota this year. By all indications from that conversation I had with El Ahmad, that pressure is not going to be placed on James Rodriguez's shoulders from day one.
It won't be placed on his shoulders, but I think one of the things I am most fascinated by when it comes to this move is how much buy-in James is bringing himself. From what I have heard of Messi going to Miami, there is such a high bar that he brings and expects of his teammates, and when they're not performing to that level, he's going to let you know. And if it's a misplaced pass, he's going to let you know. If you shoot when you should have passed, if you pass when you should have shot, all of these are standards that he is going to kind of bring up and make sure that everybody is playing to the level that he expects or would hope them to achieve. And so it does seem like he has massive influence in the way Miami play, in the way they train, in every aspect of that team, which is not surprising given that he's Lionel Messi. I am curious if James Rodriguez is bringing that same level of like discipline and awareness and leadership, Or is he coming in just to get reps and like, sure, you want me to play in the middle? I'm not going to track back, but okay. I think that will be the determinant factor. I think if he is coming in to be a part of the team and kind of lead by example, I think this is an incredibly smart move. If he is coming in to kind of get his and stay loose, I don't know if he's back in August, to Joe's point.
I think that's a really good way to frame it, Taylor. And I think a lot of these players, it's like the Thierry Henry thing, right? The theory about maybe why he wasn't the most successful coach, even before you get into the fact that probably he didn't have the best players, is probably why he was the most successful coach. But this idea that the great players sometimes struggle to become managers, no clue if this is true, but it kind of makes sense to me because their players can't do the things that they could do. Right, and so the frustration sets in, and all of a sudden you're lost in the sauce, basically, as a coach. Thierry Henry trying to watch, I don't even know who he had.
Was it Shamit Shom, I think, was the one that he was yelling at the most with playing 1-2s
exactly.
in that video.
And it's like, get it right. If you're Thierry Henry, you almost can't believe what you're seeing because it was so easy for you. And you can go that direction of just frustration and it doesn't work, or you can go the direction of raising the standards like you're talking about, Taylor. And I think that's a really helpful framing of this. It's just anybody's guess as to which of those things it's going to be. I mean, it's just wild. Like, again, I think this is truly the most unexpected, the weirdest, the most bizarre move of the offseason. And it's so juicy because there are so many outcomes here. Like I said, there's a world in which this goes really well. And he's an effective player for Minnesota, 6 rounds the whole season. They're really successful. I mean, I think this Minnesota team is going to be a playoff team. I thought they were going to be that even without James, right? So I think that's a possibility. There's a possibility he barely plays and leaves in 6 months. There's a possibility that he kind of blows some things up on his way out in 6 months. So there's a lot of different ways that this dart, a lot of different spots on the board that this dart could hit, and that's part of why it's so juicy. Graham talked about on the Friday show, I think it was last week, this idea of, well, it's kind of a win for all of us neutrals that he ends up in Minnesota and not in one of the traditional big clubs, because it provides some storylines. And I was already going to watch Minnesota, so that's, it doesn't really move the needle for me that much. But it makes watching Minnesota more interesting because, man, there's this big, huge, giant Mario Kart mystery box hovering, and I honestly can't tell if it's one of those cool rainbow-colored ones or if it's one of the red ones that you're not supposed to hit.
Those are jerks.
Yeah, they are. They're stupid jerk boxes.
Jerks.
It is, Jeff, I'm coming to you with a somewhat esoteric question.
Mario Kart
question that requires an esoteric answer. This does feel very much like a Hollywood story, right? Like, and in the Hollywood version, you are cutting from like Bayern Munich, Real Madrid to like suddenly he's on a plane to Minnesota. Like, what is happening? And he gets off and it's frozen and I don't know, he goes into a cafe to order something and he gets the wrong order or doesn't understand how things work. Like, Jeff, what is the thing James is going to have to figure out first? What is going to be the rudest awakening or the thing that like maybe outsiders might not be aware they're going to get to deal with when they move to your environs?
Pity the existence of an American barista trying to write his name on the cup. I think that he's going to get a lot of hummus, which isn't helpful. He might have to start going by James in certain pockets of the country. Right. No, I think that otherwise the biggest ones will probably just be like the relative solitude of a lot of it. I mean, like, look, the reality is there still isn't a lot of vibrancy in the Twin Cities community as we enter the 3rd month of Metro Surge. So there just isn't that same sort of culture, and the hope will be that as it warms up, it's easier for people to leave their homes and have strength in numbers. But that will be a culture shock, obviously. And I think that when you look at the style of play stuff too, I think that the defensive cover that he can rely on, I think that is something that will also be a culture shock, just looking at how squads are constructed. But, to Joe's point and to your point as well, like Minnesota does have a pretty strong locker room core for him to walk into, and mentors like people with, who have moved in from abroad. When you look at like Michael Boxall, who's been at the club for a decade, Will Trapp being a league expert, Julian Gressel, who has been on MLS Cup winners and also played with Lionel Messi, so maybe does have that sort of veteran perspective from both sides of like success and ego management. So, I think that he will generally have a good number of people he can lean on as he acclimates, as far as I can tell.
Beautiful. All right. Well, I look forward to following more of what James does, James does in Minnesota. But for now, we're going to take a break. We'll come back and talk Timbers, talk Red Bulls, talk about some roster builds so far. Back soon. Welcome back to the Total Soccer Show. Joe Lowry, it's now the time of the episode where we get to the teams that we have had on the running order and maybe not discussed for like weeks at a time. But let's talk Timbers, shall we?
Let's do it. Where do you want to go?
Jonathan Rodriguez. Let's start there. It seems like a move that people were like, why does that make you laugh?
No, Jeff said Portland when I said, where do you want to go? And I just thought that was funny. So continue. My bad.
All right. I was like, did I say the name wrong? What did I get wrong?
No, you
You
did
said that
great,
it's number
Taylor.
one in
Keep
the
it
running
up.
order?
Keep it up. Our fault.
But it seems like one that, from what I read, it seems like Portland supporters weren't so surprised by this move, but a lot of other people were, I think, given the season he had in 2024. But then he misses the whole season due to injury last year. It sounds like he would have missed the entirety of this year and would have been out of contract at the end of that one. So do we feel like this one ends up making sense for all parties involved? Maybe not for Jonathan Rodriguez, but for Portland at least.
I mean, man's getting paid either way, and he's not playing soccer probably either way. So I think it's fine for him. I mean, this was a no-brainer move from the Timbers. I was chatting with some Portland folks over the weekend and sort of wondering about when this was going to happen and why it hadn't happened already. Well, maybe sometimes announcements take longer to trickle out into the world than decisions. Ned Grabavoy had come out earlier in the offseason, that's the Timbers chief soccer officer, and basically said it's going to be a long road back for Rodriguez, and that's unfortunate, certainly because the dude was amazing. He was incredibly effective as part of that three-headed dragon the Timbers had in 2024 with Evander gone, Jonathan Rodriguez gone, Felipe Mora maybe a backup at this stage of his career. That team was fun. They weren't great, but they were a fun team, and Rodriguez was an elite MLS attacking player. I don't think there's really any doubt about that. The problem is he was eating a DP spot and not playing soccer. And so this was a no-brainer for the Timbers, who now have the ability, it's difficult at this stage, I suppose, of the calendar. They have the ability to add some talent at this point. Now, if I had to bet, and this is without any inside information, they would add a DP in the summer because, number one, most players are available then. Also, number two, even if this happened a month earlier, even if it was going to happen in the winter, it's hard to do it now as opposed to a month earlier because you're in the middle of February, and there's a lot of markets that don't want to sell to you now because they can't replace any players now because their transfer windows are closed. So it's a difficult time on all of this, and I do sort of wonder why this didn't happen a month and a half ago or more than that. But either way, the Timbers have a chance to be better now. They've had a really interesting offseason. I mean, they've added Cole Bassett in a trade from the Colorado Rapids. That's one of the moves that we haven't talked about. They've added a player who I assume is going to be a backup center back in Bonteg, who's coming over from Australia, I believe. That's kind of it as far as their offseason business. I mean, Bassett replaces...
So really interesting and not a good way, then,
well,
basically?
yeah, and interesting in a this is a bit odd kind of way. And I suppose the Rodriguez shoe had been the one that we were waiting to drop, and that does give them flexibility. But again, it's probably too late. So I like the Bassett pickup. I think he's going to bring some good things to this team. I don't really like this team as it's currently constructed, but a DP, again, probably in the summer where you still have about half the season left because the break is going to be a little bit earlier this year. You have the World Cup break, and so more of the games are stacked towards the end of the year. Maybe that helps them integrate somebody this season, but all this has happened a little late, basically, is my top line look at this. Even though this made sense, I'm wondering why it didn't happen sooner.
So are the Timbers going to be a team that are like around the final playoff spot, maybe just outside that range until that summer window opens up, and then they can kind of reinforce as needed?
I think so. I mean, my hesitation is not about them being around the playoff spot. I mean, I think that's pretty much where they always are. They're going to be somewhere in the 7 to 13 range, probably in the Western Conference. I don't think their ceiling, as constructed, is high at all. I mean, I'm not a David Acosta believer. I think Velda is a good player. Anthony's a good player, but can Anthony be Anthony and Santiago Moreno from last year? Probably not. Maybe Velda's. There's somebody's going to pick up some slack, but I don't think this team is good now as it's constructed. I'm just worried that even if they sign somebody in the summer, I know I just said you have a longer chunk of the season, but still, you have to integrate a player, and there's a lot that goes into that, and to do it all, like to bank all of your hopes on that, to really shoot up the Western Conference table, I wouldn't bet on that if I was a betting man. So I think the Timbers are in for a bit of a struggle bus sort of season, but maybe they've got moves that I don't know about, right? Maybe the move comes in sooner on a DP front. Maybe they have to add someone else in central midfield. I don't know if that's coming from within, if it's coming from elsewhere. Their starting midfield right now is Diego Chara and Cole Bassett, which good players, both of them. Chara didn't play a whole lot of minutes last year, and the dude's old as dirt. And Cole Bassett is more of like an 8.5 kind of player, where he's not going to always be doing the gritty defensive stuff, even though he can. So I think they need more pieces, and I think they need those pieces soon.
How old is Diego Chara? When you say he's old as dirt?
As
he's
old as
39.
dirt.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I'll give you that one.
There you go.
Whenever Joe is like, he's old as dirt, he's 31. It makes me want to not
I mean,
punch
Diego Chara
Joe.
could be 31 or it could be 43. Like, honestly, he could be anywhere in that range. And the dude is a legend. I'm not trying to disparage the legend. He's an absolute icon of this league. I just wouldn't want to be going into the season with Diego Chara as a starter on my depth chart. Like, and my alternative being João Ortiz, who was just bad last year. I mean, the Timbers are banking.
cover.
Yeah, they just don't. They don't have adequate cover. They're banking the Timbers on a full season of James Pantemis in goal being a ceiling raiser for them. They're banking on their young-ish members of the back line. I think they got a lot of 23-year-olds improving and taking a step this year, which is not a bad bet. I think they have some talent in the back line. They're banking on Cole Bassett being amazing and Velda and DaCosta both being really, really good. And just the odds of all those things happening to me don't feel especially high.
Jeff, how are you feeling about Colorado losing Cole Bassett? What does that do for them?
Yeah, it sends a kind of concerning message, and I certainly saw a lot of Rapids fans who were questioning the wisdom of this for a few reasons. I think that Cole Bassett at this point, he's older than you think, right? Like he's 24 now, and I think that sometimes he's still kind of some dirt, fresh dirt, possibly.
True, fresh dirt, yeah,
right, yeah,
24-year-old dirt.
You're welcome. So he has the. He doesn't really have that same sort of cachet of like, here's everything that's going to round out about his game, right? Like, here are the elements that you usually assume that a player who's getting regular minutes from 20 to 24 is going to pick up. He's gleaned those lessons for the most part, right? And when you look at his performance log, now granted, down the stretch, Colorado sort of face planted, right? Like they were much stronger in the first 2/3. Correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, if I'm misremembering last year and the year before. But first 2/3 of the season were much more with it. Zach Steffen's form starts to wobble. They have some injuries. They trade Georgi Mihailovic. I think that was the biggest one. They got rid of him to Toronto, and then more pressure on Cole Bassett. And Cole Bassett was pretty inconsistent down the stretch, right? He would have some really good games, and then he would alternate them with some really ineffective games where he's pulled after 60 minutes. And when I think of our conversations last year about the Portland Timbers, it was a tale of inconsistency and expecting a lot of feast or famine players to be feasting in unison. And it is very difficult to confidently project those sorts of things. I don't know if Cole Bassett is the sort of player who's going to add consistency to Portland. Now, from the Colorado side, I'm worried that we are now seeing 24 years old. We used to be selling our left backs to clubs in Holland, and now we are moving him to a team that we were competing for the wild card play-in spots against last year, who isn't really known as a developmental club, who then can go on and sell him further, right? Like I think it does say a kind of worrying thing about where Colorado is right now, which is we just need to recoup funds, and this is kind of the window where we needed to do it in his contract or whatever the reason is. I'm not really sure what confidence you're supposed to take if you're a fan when you see a boyhood player leave as he's like just entering his prime for, frankly, what I would say is kind of below market value, and certainly to a club that I would see as a competitor rather than an upgrade. But such is life in Rapids land.
Yeah, I think it's a good macro point on the Rapids, I suppose. I don't think I would make that point about this move because I mean, you mentioned maybe an undervalue. I think they paid with $2.6-ish million as a floor for Cole Bassett, the Timbers. That's more than I would pay for Cole Bassett, probably. And I think it's probably more than European teams would pay for Cole Bassett after his loan to the Netherlands didn't work out. And so I sort of think that if you're Colorado, it seems like Matt Wells didn't really rate Cole Bassett and wants to have a pretty big influence on the squad, which is fine. He's just, Matt Wells is going to need to be really freaking good at his job this year because the roster is not very good as far as I'm concerned. But like, Matt Wells wants some influence, and they don't really rate Cole Bassett anymore, and so I think they get a nice chunk of change for him. Colorado's problem, I think, at the moment is that they just don't have very many good players. But maybe I'm wrong about that, and they'll look silly later on. But I agree, Jeff, with your point about these teams are going to be fighting each other for the wildcard spots. Like, that's probably what we're talking about, barring an unexpected move from either side.
Joe, we've talked about the Timbers, the Rapids, Minnesota to varying degrees. We're going to add the Red Bulls in here. Of those four teams, who are you most enthusiastic about right now when it comes to what they've done?
Minnesota by what they've done. Sorry, I didn't listen to the whole question. Offseason moves, probably not Minnesota because I don't really think they've gotten better on balance from where they were last year. Probably the Red Bulls, I think, have actually taken a step forward with their roster build compared to all these other teams. But Minnesota, I think, are going to be the best.
I wanted to talk about the Red Bulls.
Oh, good. I think Minnesota are going to be the best of the bunch, but that wasn't the question you asked. So go ahead, Taylor.
No, tell me why the Red Bulls are good. Let's talk about what they've done.
I made that so clunky, and I'm so sorry. Okay, the Red Bulls have done a lot. They've been up to a lot of stuff. The things we haven't talked about that the Red Bulls have done, really two major moves. They've added a DP in Jorge Ruvalcaba, who's coming over from Pumas and Liga MX. Put up some decent numbers there. Is still young-ish. He's as old as the patch of dirt that Cole Bassett is as old as. He had 5 goals and 4 assists basically in the first half of the Liga MX season. It's decent return. I think he's in the midst of kind of the best form of his life, and the Red Bulls are banking on that being something that matters for them. They put in the release, by the way, that he's a DP this year and won't have to be in the future years. So maybe that does give them some top-end roster flexibility, and so this is the thing that they can not put all their eggs in this Ruvalcaba basket, and then as they work on the game model changes that they've talked about and all these things, then they can maybe go in again to the market in the future. So in that sense, I like this move. I don't know much about Ruvalcaba as a player. I don't know exactly how good he's going to be. I do know that he fits a position of need for the Red Bulls, which is they needed wingers. They've come out and talked about De Guzman has talked about this. Michael Bradley has been talking about this, about how they want to play a more possession-y style. They want to play football is what Guzman's talked about. And so if you want to do that, you actually need some attacking players that can provide balance and make you less predictable across the width of the field. And Ruvalcaba and Cade Cowell have been the wingers that they've gone out and invested in. And I think that makes a lot of sense. Whether it's those players that make sense, I'm not a big Cade Cowell guy. I don't know. Ruvalcaba's profile is not one that smacks you in the face and says, oh, this guy's going to be an amazing DP in MLS. But they needed talent. And they got talent, and that's a good sign. The other move that they've made, really, and I suppose there are two along the back line, but the main one is that they sold Noah Isla to Bristol City for about $4 million, which is a good chunk of change for Noah Isla. I think Noah Isla is one of the best center backs in MLS, and I think they are really, really going to miss him. When you think about how they've lost Carlos Coronel, who was one of the best goalkeepers in MLS, he's been like the sixth best shot stopper, I think, based off of goals saved above expected since he joined MLS. He is a huge loss, and now you've lost your star goalkeeper and your star center back, who is one of these stars. Both of those players really are among the stars at their position in MLS. And that's when I start to worry. I mean, it seems to me that the Red Bulls' attack has gotten better, but losing Coronel and losing Isla, and okay, you signed Jaquil Marshall-Ruddy, who's a nice high upside pickup. You got rid of Wiki Carmona in the process. Congrats on a job well done, everybody involved in that situation, except Montreal. That's hilarious that you just traded for Wiki Carmona. But I think the Red Bulls have improved in the areas that are going to make them more fun to watch, and they've gotten worse in the areas that are going to make their games more fun to watch. So I think the Red Bulls are going to be fun. I don't know if they're going to be great this year. I think they're probably not going to be great.
What's the over-under on smiles from Michael Bradley over the course of the entire season? If I set it at 4.5,
yeah,
you taking the over?
I'll take the over, but only slightly. Jeff, am I off on that? I might be off on that.
I'm going to say that we're nervous that the line was too low after the first 2 weeks, and then suddenly it'll go to a skidding halt.
Good.
So I think 4.5 is fair, and I'm going to say narrowly over. Nice. The other part of the Red Bulls rebuild, just to keep in mind, is Coronel, massive loss. I completely agree. Noah Isla, massive loss. Andres Reyes left a year ago as well, and I know he was hurt pretty much all of last year except for one half, but he was so crucial for them down the stretch in their MLS Cup run, and they still need to replace another center back. And then they also moved on Daniel Edelman and Peter Stroud, who had both been regular starting midfielders, so they also look a little less stable there. Ruvalcaba, from what I've seen and what I've heard, he's more agile than fast. Give him the ball and he'll be really good at kind of progressing against opposition, but he's not someone who's going to sprint into space. So maybe that's a good complementary profile for Cade Cowell, who you want to keep off the ball for maximum value with his width potential. And if you move him to the right and he's crossing on a strong foot rather than kind of trying to figure out how to get it onto his right foot and cut into the field and then try to create a shot, which was something that he was often doing to very little effect with San Jose, maybe that works a little bit better. But I think overall, the smiles will come early for Michael Bradley. But yeah, I have similar questions about the squad's construction at present, as Joe does.
I think there are reasons to question, because we've talked about those reasons. I think the attack has gotten better, the defense has gotten worse. And you're probably relying then on the tactical changes to make up the difference, right? If you really want to take a step forward. Or also you're recognizing that, this is transfer window one of a new vision for what the New York Red Bulls are going to look like. And you're going to need more than one transfer window in order to reach the vision. I will say, we've probably underrated, and Taylor, you should be all over this because I know you were the Eric Maxim Choupo-Moting guy last year. That dude was pretty good, and Emil Forsberg was good. And if you are making their lives easier by actually having wingers who can sort of beat you on the dribble in some way or another or can threaten in behind, and it's not, I cannot emphasize enough how bad of a year last year Wiki Carmona had for them, and he played a ton of minutes. And Mohamed Sofo is a fun young player. He's not probably a guy you want starting games for you on the wing this year. They've gotten really clearly, obviously better. And I think they might have even gotten better in midfield, where Donkor is going to play real minutes for them now that the depth chart isn't so clogged. And that dude is amazing. He could win 22 under 22 this year. He is an incredible all-around kind of box-to-box, maybe a little deeper. Maybe that's giving his attacking contributions a little too much shine. But he's a really, really good young central midfielder. And they might end up upgrading in that part of the field as well. So I still like a lot of the moves that the Red Bulls have made. I think when a $4 million offer comes in for Noah Isla, you probably have to take it in a lot of respects. So I think they've done some good work. I'm just intrigued to see what this team actually looks like on the field in a way that I haven't been intrigued about the Red Bulls in a really long time / maybe ever.
Yep. As a person who watched them live last year, yes, I would agree with that, Joe. And a lot of it isn't to do with the players they've brought in. A lot of it is to do with Michael Bradley being there. I am a big fan of Michael Bradley from his playing days. I think he's going to be a really interesting and good coach. I don't really have any reason for thinking that other than the way he played and who he was as a player, combined with what we know of him being a kind of leader and organizer for the USMNT. Under certain managers especially. So it feels like a smart appointment. We've already talked about that previously, but I think that makes me most intrigued by the Red Bulls this season. They're one of the teams I'm most excited to watch out of all the teams that we're going to get to watch. So with that in mind, let's park it there. We're going to come back and we're going to do some Q&As about some teams that have improved, gotten worse, some sleeper teams, all that good stuff. Back soon. Welcome back to the Total Soccer Show. During the break, I was told that for this segment, I have to put my co-hosts on timers or we're going to be here for maybe until MLS starts regular season play. So I'm going to give you each 1 minute to respond to the opening prompt. Then we'll have like a minute or two of discussion, and then we'll keep it moving accordingly. Joe, I'll come to you first for this one. Which team has improved the most this winter? Clock starts now. Joe, an update on your time. It has begun.
Taylor. Thank you so much. I'm going to say Real Salt Lake has improved the most this winter. I don't know if this is the right answer or not. They're in my group of teams. I'm talking too much. They've added at least 4 new starters in this window, which doesn't mean those are all good players, but they've added Lucas Engel, who's going to play as a left-sided center back for them. Fine MLS player. They've added John Spearings in central midfield. They needed talent in that part of the field. They've added Guy Lavogi, who we talked about. He's got a nice profile that I like for this league coming over from Ligue 2. They added a new U22 initiative center back coming from Colombia who's supposed to be pretty good. No clue if that's true or not, obviously. And they've added Sanabria, this left wing back coming in from Liga MX, where he's also broken into the Uruguay national team. That dude looks like a player. That move has not been officially announced yet, but it's been reported by basically everybody. Again, just adding talent doesn't mean that you're automatically going to get better. Transfers go wrong for a lot of reasons. But I like a lot of the moves that RSL have made, and I like some of their pieces. I think they maybe have improved the most this winter.
All right. 1 second over, but I'll allow it. Did you mention Xavier Gozo in there?
No, but they didn't add him this winter. So,
but I just will get better.
It's mandatory that when you mention RSL, you must say his name.
That dude rules. He might leave in the summer. He's that good.
There we go.
Yeah.
Jeff, over to you.
I thought I was going to be clever with RSL on my list, but I'll be similarly clever with Austin FC, who I didn't expect when I went through this. But I did the same thing as Joe, which is who gained starters, who gained more minutes, and whose depth looks better. And I think that when you look at Austin, I understand the questions about Facundo Torres and how he's not going to create the chances that's needed for Brandon Vasquez, but he is a talent upgrade over what they had. And the reports that Tom Bogert has that teams are interested in Uzuni for like $12 million valuations is nuts and hilarious, and they need to take that money if it's real money. They're also bullish on Mateja Djordjevic, who is a Serbian center back who signed in July. What I'm most excited about is that their left side of Jaden Nelson and Joseph Rosales, I think, could actually be like a really good complement to one another and could be incredibly dangerous down the opposite flank from Facundo Torres, which then would free him and take the ball off of his feet a little bit more, and maybe that actually helps the attack move easier. Yeah. They still have Brad Stuver. They still have Owen Wolf. Like, I think that they still have a lot of the pieces that I'd be excited about whenever Brandon Vasquez gets back. It's a system that I think makes sense. They were a playoff team, but we didn't talk about them a lot because they're below the top 5 in the West. I think that they will be more competitive every week this year than they were last.
Yeah. I mean,
Joe, Jeff had 5 extra seconds. You have 5 more seconds to say about RSL?
No, I'm good. But thank you for the offer. That's incredibly gracious of you. I'm ceding my time on RSL to talk about Austin instead. I like on paper the moves Austin have made. I think Facundo Torres is a good MLS player. We've talked about the fit and our confusion there. But still, in a vacuum, I think he's a good MLS player. Nelson and Rosales are good MLS players as well. I still don't really know how all the pieces fit in Austin, and that's kind of why I didn't actually have. They're on my short list, but they're at the bottom of my short list because I don't know. I mean, Rosales has played some as a winger in preseason so far, which I don't think is his best role. Can you play Rosales and Nelson both on the left side because they both want to be wide, or I think are better wide? I don't know if you can really do that, or maybe I'm wrong about the fit there. Like, you had Biro at left back who was pretty good last year, and now you've brought in. It doesn't really make sense to me, right? Yeah, all-star, absolutely. All-star, 100% deserved.
A day of replacement for Jordi Alba. Yeah,
what an icon. I mean, it's just all a bit murky as to how it fits together.
Yeah.
I kind of think about this since we're doing now zooming out in our next 12 seconds or whatever it is. I think there's some contenders who fine-tuned in a way that I really like, And I think there's some bad teams that improved in a way that I really like. And then there's Austin, who are sort of like in between those things. I think DC, RSL, and Houston all added at least 4 starters, if not more than that. Don't know if they're going to be good or not, but they've really made moves and recognized how terrible they are and took advantage of that flexibility that they had. And then I think 3 contenders really fine-tuned based off of my looks. At this Nashville, adding Christian Espinosa, they could be the right answer to this. LAFC with Stefan Eustachio, they could be the right answer to this. And Chicago with Soler Tros and Robin Ludd and some of the other young pieces they added as well. Maybe they could be the answer to this. I think they're probably not, but they're in that tier.
Probably not.
But it depends on if you want to go with a contender who you think is almost there and got better in an obvious way, some did, or a bad team that made a lot of swings.
The only other team that was on my list that you didn't rattle off there, as we have absolutely thwarted our own requests for the timer in this segment,
beautiful.
Are the LA Galaxy between Joel Klaus and Justin Hack starting, and I think Eric Comey being cover for Marco Royce, I think is really clever and smart. Great call. Then they just added some depth across the board.
Joe, the timer is back in order for us to discuss who will drop the most in the Shield rankings.
Ooh, okay, am I going? Am I starting?
Yeah.
Is it happening? Okay. The Philadelphia Union are a team that I'm worried about this year. Not in a will they miss the playoffs kind of way. I'm done doubting the Union as a team that's going to be a serious team that we have to pay attention to. I think they are that. But I am worried about them as, are they an elite team anymore? In that sort of vein, I'm extremely concerned about the Union because Kai Wagner might be the one player that they can't just replace. I mean, they've replaced so many guys, and they've done it really effectively. They've done it at the top of their shape. They've done it at the back of their shape. They've done it in midfield. You can rattle through the list of players, and they just haven't missed a lot of those guys. They've been very successful in spite of a high roster turnover, and that's because I think their style dictates clear positional profiles that they look for. They have a lot of buy-in throughout the club, and they recruit really well, both from without and from within. Kai Wagner, there is no other Kai Wagner. It's certainly not one that they've signed. I mean, they exist on the planet, but can they find one for a Philadelphia Union budget? They did it once. Doing that twice is going to be so hard. This was the player that when they did all of their high pressing and vertical passing stuff to get into the final third, he was the one playing the final ball from that left side. If you're missing both him and Quinn Sullivan this year, I just don't think you're elite anymore. I just don't.
All right. Jeff, Joe says Union. Jeff says?
They were second on my list.
Nice.
I actually did my Shield projection already, which is nuts.
Clever.
And so I've done my conference rankings, whatever. And there's one team that fell more than 10 places, and they fell 16 places from last year. And it's New York City FC.
Yep, they're on my list.
I'm starting to wonder if they didn't expect David Lee to look for other jobs, because the way that this winter went, like it just worse, right? Like you knew Alonso Martinez was going to be out for the season. The Musasila sort of thing, like it sounds really messy the way that they're backing out of that. So like, that's not a great look. They were a conference finalist last year. They lost a lot of talent. There isn't really that marquee signing you're looking at. Besides a mascot, they got a mascot now who looks really cool. They have a pigeon, so they're finally owning that part. So that's probably their headliner of the offseason. They were a conference finalist last year. I think that they're falling quick. Keaton Parks, when he comes back, I think will help raise the floor. Matt Freese will stay busy. I think that New York City is going to be far closer to the Spoon than the Shield at this point.
Yeah, they were the only other team I had on my list. I had Philly top because they were first last year, and I could see them dropping to like a 7 seed in the East. And so if you figure both conferences are roughly even, then they're around 13, 14, somewhere in that range. And NYCFC, they were 9th in the Shield race last year. I think they're going to be a fringe playoff team in the East this year, as constructed anyway. And they're still going to add pieces, right? That is going to happen.
They better.
I just don't know when that's going to happen because they have gotten worse. I totally agree with you, Jeff. I could see them dropping a lot as well.
James Rodriguez in the summer. Make it happen, NYCFC. Jeff, which under-the-radar offseason move do you like the most?
I like Markin Giavogi, and I guess this is just an RSL segment here, because the more that I've looked into him, the more I think he's actually the exact profile of striker who's going to be good for Diego Luna, which for like selfish U.S. men's national team writer purposes is something that I'd like to see him take the next step. Really good at winning the ball in the air, good at working into counters. He keeps the ball moving. He's not someone who's going to dwell on it. He's going to try to like pass it off of his feet pretty efficiently, which again gets the ball to Luna a little bit quicker, which I think could help in transition and free him up in space. I only say under the radar because it's RSL, because it's a guy whose name does take a little concentration to say, and he's coming from Ligue 2. So he's not going to be coming in with the most glamorous of profiles, or his best work was in Ligue 2, I should say. But personally, I think that that's the sort of move. That's the sort of striker they've been looking for since Chicho Arango left. And I think that that's also the sort of attacking talent who can push them back into the conversation of maybe trying to skip the play-in game. I don't quite have them there yet because I think that the bottom part of the bottom 2/3 of the West actually did generally get better this offseason. The more I looked at the rosters using Ben Wright's excellent depth charts that they put together for 615 Soccer. Overall, I think Giavogi should be a good fit.
I love that. I love that pick. I didn't have him on my list here, but I think that's a great shout. I think Hassani Dotson to Seattle feels like one that we're going to realize we should have talked about more. And I know we just talked about it last week, and so I don't really even feel the need to take the whole minute on them. But Dotson's a good player, and if he's healthy, which is a bit of a question, he's had injury issues derail multiple seasons. But, I mean, this guy is a really useful MLS player. And Obed Vargas is probably a little bit more than Hassani Dotson on that scale of decent to great. But Dotson's a reasonable fit. I think Seattle can expect to get better in other parts of the field, namely the attack, where I think Osaze de Rosario is in for a massive season. I really do. And if not him, then Manungu. And if not Manungu, then somebody else, right? I mean, I just think the Sounders are going to be really stinking good this year. Dotson's going to be part of that. It's just such a smart, low-key ad that feels very Seattle, getting a Washington guy coming back to the area. Elsewhere, honorable mentions on my list. I have Czech Sabali coming to the Vancouver Whitecaps. Who's that? Everybody said. All right, well, here, let me tell you. He's coming from Metz in Liga. He started 12 games in Liga this season. He played at AFCON with Senegal. Not a starter for them, but came off the bench in multiple games. Scored 14 non-penalty goals last year with Metz in Ligue 2. Hadn't really produced before last season, so maybe that was a one-off. Or maybe it wasn't, and Vancouver are buying at exactly the right time. I think Vancouver's recruitment, I guess, has been good all along, maybe. And, I mean, I don't know. I'm not really sure what to make of it, I guess. But they needed help on the wings, and they've added Sabali. They've added Bruno Caicedo from Ecuador as a U22 initiative attacker. Vancouver have done pretty good shopping in those secondary markets in South America. Pedro Vite came from Ecuador. They've added other pieces from South America, not from the glamour areas of South America when it comes to this sport. I think Caicedo could be a hit, and they've also added AZ Jackson, who's a fine, 1,000 minutes a season kind of player. When you lose Ali Ahmed and Jadon Nelson, they clearly understood that they needed to add more talent in those areas, and they did exactly that.
Jeff, in not talking about Hassani Dotson for a full minute, Joe talked for almost 2 minutes. So any other things you would like to add?
Yeah, real quick. Brooklyn Reigns to New England. We talked about it a little bit when it happened, but I think that maybe people will start to appreciate his talent a little bit more as he moves to the East and out of Houston. I'm excited to see what Daniel Edelman can do getting to play actual credible soccer in St. Louis under Yohan Demé, just to see what his skill set looks like at a whole. And then the other one I had is if healthy, which is now an annual question with Lewis Morgan. I think that he could help make up for Chucky Lozano's departure and then some and be a really good compliment for Anders Dreyer.
Yeah. San Diego yesterday signed Bryce Duke. And my genuine reaction, I didn't say this out loud, so I can't say that I did. My genuine reaction was, yeah, okay, he'll probably be really good for them. I mean, that's my reaction when San Diego signed anybody, is that they basically squeezed really good value out of almost every player that they've signed. I think Lewis Morgan, if healthy, right? And that's a huge question. We don't know. They didn't take a huge risk on that signing in general in terms of the budget charge. But everybody they signed seems to turn to gold, so I think that's a good shout, Jeff.
All right, Jeff. Which Eastern Conference team is our sleeper for 2026?
I think Chicago is going to make a major stride into the top four in a big way, in an emphatic way. I really like the way that they coalesced this winter. They lost Brian Gutierrez. They replaced him with Robin Lod. I think that'll just help them in the short term. And I think it helps clarify roles a little bit better in terms of the final third. Jonathan Bamba being in his second season, I think should help him be even better. Philip Zinkernagel obviously has proven that he's best 11 caliber in this league at his day. So that's also, a good sign. Hugo Kuipers is still there. You combine that with Cincinnati, they're not going to fall off in a big way, but I think that they're still trying to kind of rebuild the midfield. And that's an area of strength for Chicago. Philadelphia falling off, Orlando, Charlotte probably taking steps back. I think Chicago is ready and to credibly step in. Also, keep an eye on Josh Cohen. I think the fact that he's there, he's been a pretty respected backup, but didn't really get much of a look in Atlanta. And I think it makes it a little easier if people are impressed by Chris Brady to consider succession plans in the short term, which just helps with that sort of transfer movement.
Great shot. Yeah, I mean, I think Chicago are going to be really good this year as well. So I agree with Jeff. I think I've talked about them a lot this offseason, so I wanted to go somewhere else with my pick and maybe even a little bit deeper of a sleeper. Atlanta United. Are they a sleeper team this year? Now, I don't think Atlanta United are going to be especially good this year, but they were 14th in the Eastern Conference last year. They were wretched. I think they're going to be better this year by a notable margin. I don't know if they're going to make the playoffs or not. I really don't know how that's all going to come down. But I think that Atlanta United have some pieces that I like, and I think they were unreasonably bad last year. They finished below CF Montreal in the standings last season. I just don't think that's going to happen again. They were, according to Paul Harvey, who wrote this for ASA in their good previews that they do every single year, go read those, they were the second most unlucky team in MLS history last year, based off of underperforming their expected points total. They picked up 28 points on the season, abysmal. They had an expected points tally of about 43 points. Still not very good, and I still don't think Atlanta are going to be very good this year. But could they be a bottom-tier playoff team? I think they probably could. I still like Emmanuel Latte a lot. I think I like him more than anybody else on this panel. I think I like him more than most people out there. I think Tata knows what he's doing. They haven't really gotten a whole lot better this offseason, to be totally honest, but I think the pieces just massively underperformed the sum of their parts last year. And I don't think they're going to be great, but I think they're not going to be as abysmal this year.
Jeff, any thoughts on Atlanta, or just an emphatic head nod?
Emphatic head nod. I'm still. I fought myself. I actually put them in a playoff spot, and I realized I was doing things I used to do to the LA Galaxy years ago. So I swatted my hands away from my keyboard and put them in 11th. Right behind New England, who's another team that I think will look better. I don't know if they'll go unbeaten in 9 this year at any point, but I think that they will go unbeaten more often than they did last year.
Oh, that's my favorite stat. All right. What about in the West, Joe? Who's our sleeper team out West?
Oh, I didn't decide before we started. I have 3 teams. I don't know.
Jeff, who's your sleeper team out West?
Jeff, you go
and
first.
Joe can cherry pick from there. Go ahead, Jeff.
Well, yeah, so I already did the Austin FC is good now case. Joe already gave the RSL is good now case.
Yep.
So my third one is San Jose. So here we go.
On my list.
Yeah, and we talked about them
Maybe
a couple
a
of weeks
sleeper?
ago. San Jose, I think so.
San Jose is always a sleeper. I think by definition they're a sleeper.
Yeah, I think
Were they
so.
top of the West last year?
No,
San Jose?
they didn't make the playoffs.
San Diego was.
Oh, San Jose. I'm thinking San Diego. I was like, what? Can they? Okay, there we go. Cool.
The good news is I don't need the full minute, so this was a good time for the intervention. No, I think that they look better composed. I think Timo Werner, you guys have given me even more optimism after our segment that we did on it. I think that he'll be even better than my initial expectations were. I just think that he fits the Western Conference's vibe very nicely, which I think should be good. They have good chance creation. I don't think it's going to be like, see, we didn't need Christian Espinoza levels of good or like style of play that he couldn't have helped them with, but I think short of that, actually, that there could be a point this season where we're looking at saying if they had just had Christian Espinoza, they could have challenged top 4, and that'll be tough.
Yeah, I mean, they still need one more piece, San Jose, I think, to really be a team that I totally buy, but I think they're going to get that piece, and then I think I'm going to buy them. I think the Galaxy are going to be an automatic playoff team, but that's boring, and we've talked about them a lot this offseason. I just want to say I'm holding quietly, a little St. Louis City stock. Not a lot. Just a little bit. Is this informed by me watching 30 minutes of them playing in preseason on Saturday? Yeah, a little bit.
What else do we have to work with?
100%. I think this team is going to play really fun soccer. At least at the beginning of the season. Maybe they get punched in the mouth. They probably will because they don't have a lot of good players. And then they'll change things up a little bit. But I think Yohan Demay is a smart guy. I think Corey Ray is a smart guy leading that front office. I think they've added some fun pieces who fit a possession style, especially in Mamadou Mbake Fall this winter. And I think they could be decent. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. When I haven't put together my predictions yet, I don't think I'm going to have them in the playoff field, which means they're still going to be bad this year. If you don't make the playoffs, even if you do make the playoffs, you can still be bad. If you don't, you're definitely bad. I think St. Louis are probably still going to be bad this year, but I think they're going somewhere, and I think we're going to see that play out at the start of this season.
I like it. I don't like that neither one of you included DC United, but I feel like there are reasons for that we'll get into when we do our season previews, which are coming. It's going to be myself, Ty Barijo, Jeff Reuter, and the Graham Ruthven joining us. And then I think at some point Ryan will be hosting as well. So it's going to be a packed house for some MLS previewing. But there's only the 29 teams to get through. So I don't know how we'll have that much ground to cover.
Yeah, we're just cutting off DC United, I guess, and only doing 29 of the 30. I like that. Might as well.
Was that
actually no? We should talk about DC. There are other teams that we should skip. Just kidding. We're not skipping anybody. We're going to talk about you all of you.
I
for
like
a long
the plan
time.
to skip DC United. You don't want to do that?
Nah, they'll be interesting. I'm intrigued.
All right, fine. Well, on that note, thank you, gentlemen, for talking your sleepers, your exciting moves, your James Rodriguez's, your James Rodriguez's, your James Rodriguez's too. Jeff Reuter, thank you, my friend.
Of course.
Joe Lowry, always a pleasure.
Hey, same to you, Taylor. Thanks.
Taylor Rockwell, always a pleasure. And listeners, always a pleasure chatting with you all. Thank you so much for listening. We greatly appreciate it, and we'll talk to you very soon.